Hey guys, what's going on? This is Kyle at ProjectionHub, and I am back with another video today. And this one I think is going to be pretty helpful and should be pretty simple to replicate. So what I want to demonstrate for you, and maybe I'll set the scene by saying this, is that recently I've had a number of people, particularly startups, reach out and ask for some feedback or input on if their kind of target market or where they are thinking about starting a business is like feasible, or if it makes sense to start it there. And sometimes that can be a tricky thing to think about, especially if you're planning to start a business in a town that maybe you're familiar with. You might have a skewed point of view, or you might think really strongly about, like, if I start this business, it's gonna be better than the ones that exist, and kind of come up with a system where you can do some free research to validate that feeling. And I'm gonna demonstrate that for you now. So what this video is not, it's not like a location or site assessment process. This is more like, is the market you plan to compete in, can it support your business, or what kind of uphill battle are you looking at? And I'll give a little bit more context there. And so, yeah, I'm gonna show you some free things you can do. So all of these tools and calculations and whatever are gonna be free for you. And feel free to give it a try. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us either by commenting down below, or you can contact us directly at support@projectionhub.com. So here we have a few things we're gonna do. First, we are going to be using Gemini, which is a free AI, LLM tool you can use. So don't freak out, because we're going to be doing some additional, research to validate some of this stuff. But what I like to do, what I'm thinking about, is a market feasible. And keep in mind, this process is really only going to work for businesses that the physical, like, location and geography matter. So think retail, think anything medical clinic related. The example I'm going to give today is going to be like a vet, restaurants. So anything that's going to have a physical space, or your customer base is within a specific footprint. So you don't necessarily have to have a building, but let's say you're an HVAC business that operates within a specific area. Even if you have one truck and you leave it at home and you don't have a warehouse or an office or something like that. So keep that in mind. This is going to be more for geographically bound businesses. And so how we're going to use Gemini is to do a little bit of research for us. So I'm showing on screen a prompt you can use. I'll paste this down in the description below so you can copy and paste it. Gemini is free to use. And let me just show you. When you open up Gemini, you can go to Tools and you can change it to Deep Research. You can do a couple of deep research reports for free, so that's what I would recommend using. You don't have to use Pro. It'll probably default to like Fast or Lightning or something like that if you're using a free account. But you'll put in that prompt, the report, it'll think for a little bit and it'll say, like, okay, here's what I'm gonna do. And then you click Start Report, and it's gonna take a little bit of time and it's gonna do some research for you. But essentially the prompt that I'm having it do is I want it to look for all the vets that are, or vet urgent cares that are in Greenwood, Indiana. So a town that I live nearby, and I want it to put some math behind it. So, we're close to Indianapolis. So there's quite a few people that live in the area. It's a pretty, populous area. And I know that there's a number of vets. And so I want to get some data on typically how many households or patients does it take to support one individual vet clinic. Now, really high performing vet clinics are probably far going to exceed that, and underperforming ones might but I want to know the average that it takes to support one. And then, if that comes back and says it's 4,000 households and there's 65,000, people, or, 30,000 residents in an area, you can kind of do the simple math to find out, like, reasonably how many vets can be supported in a target market. And then we can see how many competitors there actually are. So that will give us at least the supply side of the equation, right? So we're going to be trying to determine supply and demand. Is there enough supply? Is there not enough supply? Is there too much supply? And then also, is there demand? Is there growing demand? So those are the two sides that we want to indicate to give us some sense of, like, is this location, is this area, this target market a good place for me to consider starting my business? And I'll give you some ways to kind of determine at the end of this if you should go or no go. So yeah, we want it to do the hard part of, like, doing that research, doing the calculation for us. And then I'm going to demonstrate some things for you. So I had it run this exact prompt, and you can see this really long, detailed report it gave me, which we're not going to read through this all together. I'm just going to show you some things that will be helpful here. But the main things I want to look at and show you is it did exactly what I was hoping for a calculation. It went and found, in Greenwood proper, what the population is, total households, income, we can use some tools like censusreporter.org, which takes the US Census data to kind of determine some demographic information. So at least supports like, hey, this is a pretty good community probably for a vet because it was pretty high income for the area. That is usually correlates to people with pet ownership and wanting to use vets and that kind of stuff. So that's at least one quick tool you can validate. Is the market the right kind of person, the audience the right kind of person? And I think it is. So now we want to kind of look to see what the calculation is going to be. And if I scroll down, I highlight it in green. So the benchmark it came up with was the minimum is approximately 1,000 active clients to maintain and operate financially sustainable. Now keep this in mind, depending upon your market, you want to do this for your specific market because the cost of living is different places. It might take more or less clients in your area depending upon what you can charge and what people are willing to pay. So that is going to float. And that's why you want to have, you don't want to just use the data I'm giving here. If you're opening a vet, you want to do this prompt on your own and specify your area. But then it says the average is around 1,400 pet owning households, right? So there's a difference between the minimum and the average there. And you can see this nice table put together for us. So hypothetical scenario and then Greenwood, yep. Households. So 1,000 to 1,500 is kind of our range we're going for there. And then the Greenwood calculation ended up being 1,170, right? So the outcome is that it's not way too oversaturated, but it's very competitive is kind of the takeaway from that. I think it said 17 or 18 in a 7-mile radius. And I had to determine what is the appropriate radius that people are willing to drive in the area, which that's going to change depending upon density. If you live in a really small town that only has one vet, people might be willing to drive 20 minutes to get to you. That's not the case here. There's a lot of options. So this kind of gives us our basis of supply side. Is there supply? The answer is yes, there is supply. Is it oversaturated? I don't think it's oversaturated, but it's highly competitive. So that gives us one side of the equation. Now we need to look at demand. Does demand, because if we know it's going to be highly competitive, then we need some indication, I think, on the demand side that it looks really promising in order to feel confident hopping into it. Because if the demand doesn't look good, then you're coming into a highly competitive environment. And if it's not growing demand, that means you need to be prepared to disrupt and overtake other existing competitors, which that is business. That's kind of what you need to do in general. But obviously that feels differently. Like if you did this for your scenario and you saw like, hey, there is not enough supply for this industry and there's growing demand, that's win-win. That's the perfect scenario for success. So we've looked at the supply side in this example. We determined it's going to be competitive, not oversaturated, but it's going to be competitive. Now let's go to the demand side. Also, before I move on to demand, actually, I wanted to say 2 other supply kind of calculation methods you could do if you're in a smaller market. So like I grew up in a very small town, like 2,000 people, right? And I don't even know if there was a vet in that town. If there was maybe one. So you don't need to ask Gemini to do that calculation for you if you are in a small enough market that you can count what's going on. So, you can use the 1,000 or 1,500 households as a basis for that. But let's say you are in a town that's got 6,000 people in it and there's 2 or 3 vets. What I would probably do is I would probably call those vets acting as if I wanted to be a new patient, and I would just see when they can get me in for a new patient visit. See how far out they're booking. Is it they can get me in tomorrow? Is it they can get me in 10 days? Is it they can get me in 4 weeks? And if all of those competitors have a decently far booking out, that's an indication to you that it's pretty competitive. It isn't competitive, but it's that there is opportunity for more. If they're all booking out pretty far, that means that there's probably not enough supply. If they are all able to get you in tomorrow, that means it's probably pretty competitive. So that's an alternative to doing, the whole digital deep research side is you can just count it and do that math on your own pretty easy. Okay, now the supply side, or the demand side, sorry. One quick way I like to do this is you can create a free Google AdWords account. And, Google AdWords is what you use to like run ads on Google and that kind of stuff. And you may have to create a dummy campaign to be able to access this free keyword planner tool. But once you get into your Google Ads dashboard, which is a free thing, you can go to Tools, Keyword Planner, and I put in, and this allows you to see how much are people searching for specific keywords on Google in a specific location. So I set the location as Greenwood, and I want to see vet near me, vet clinic, vet urgent care, and we can see the trend in that. And there's a couple of things that I always like to look for here. One, year-over-year change. So how does now compared to the 12 months ago, people searching for that phrase? And I don't know what happened here, but you can see a massive drop off in June of 2024, and it has stayed reduced ever since then. I don't know if that was a Google change. I don't know if that was whatever that was, but even if let's change this to the last 24 months, maybe. Oh, you can still see that in there. To refresh this and see if it's going to make me re-put in all the information. Sure it is. Okay, now you get to see the whole thing. So if I do vet near me, vet clinic, vet urgent care, and then I'm going to change my location here to Greenwood, Indiana, take off the US so we can see our footprint that it's going to look for there, and we're going to just get results. It will provide, obviously it provides a bunch of related keywords. I like to filter for the highest ones. So like when we look at this, it looks relatively flat. Year over year, though, still minus 29%, minus 36%. Like that's not very promising to me. So in this specific example I'm laying out for you, and again, another thing, like you said, you could do is you could bump this out to 4 or 5 years to see, like, even if it's not growing, has it been pretty steady for all the data they have? But you saw that big dip about a couple years ago. So in this specific example, on my town, I would not encourage someone, or I at least would warn them to say they better have a darn good plan coming in on how they're going to disrupt. So that might look more like acquiring an already existing vet that's in the area that's competing and can be approved. Option 2 would be, I'm going to be going through, like here you can see in Greenwood, all of the vets that are in this area. And I'm going to be going through and seeing how well are they performing. Lots of 4.8s, 4.7s, 4.6s, 4.7, 4.4, like pretty high performing vets. So we know it's competitive. There's high quality. I'm not seeing a bunch of underperforming businesses. If I was looking in an area and maybe it was pretty competitive, but the majority of them seemed to be struggling, or there was some, maybe, there's a few clustered in one spot and then one that stood alone and had poor reviews, maybe I could say, like, okay, I could set up shop next to the underperformer and try to steal that business. But that's the kind of mindset you're going to need if you want to come in and compete in a competitive market that doesn't have growing demand. Hopefully this demonstrates, how you can go about doing this. I've done this exact process 100 times. And in some cases, it's really promising on supply and demand. Sometimes it's not. And that doesn't usually result in me telling a business owner or a prospective business owner, like, don't do this. That then needs to inform things like the business plan. The business plan needs to talk about that competition. It needs to talk about your game plan for disrupting the current market. It needs to talk about those kinds of things versus if supply is low and demand is growing, that's the opportunity you talk about in your plan and your loan application, that kind of stuff. So hopefully this is helpful. Again, these are all free tools. I use Gemini Deep Research. I use Census Reporter.org. I use Google Ads free keyword planning tool. There are other types of tools out there that do this, but this is the one I like to use. And I use Google Maps. So those are all 4 free things to do. If you're out there and you are like interested in me doing this for you and getting some feedback, feel free to reach out to me. Either comment down below or support@ProjectionHub.com. I'd be happy to give you some insights into that. And one thing I guess I'll mention, if you are going through the process of starting a business and you determine, like, I'm probably gonna need, help preparing materials to do that, or feedback on if it's a good idea or not, you can check out this free expert SBA review. Now this is gonna be geared more towards, we'll give you feedback on if we think you're a good candidate for getting approved for SBA financing. And as a part of that, we can give this type of information back to you. So yeah, hopefully this was helpful. And yeah, let us know if you got any questions and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.